All right, Lon Langston.
Lincoln Park.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. Glad to have you here today.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely,
Very
absolutely.
cool. Yeah,
So for folks that are out here that are listening and watching,
yeah.
who is Lon Langston? Just tell us about a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so I mean that's an interesting question to think about yourself, right? But okay, I would say Lon Langston is somebody who was born with no innate talents, gifts, or abilities, right? I got no athletic ability. I got no academic proclivity. I got no artistic talent. I got no social skills. I mean, started from zero.
Lon, so I mean, this sounds like you're telling me no skills, no sports,
No,
nothing.
nothing.
So I mean, how are you here? What?
Okay, so what you find is if you start with no gifts, talents, or abilities, you have to figure out how to cobble it all together, right? You have to figure out how it really works,
Right.
So if you're born with some of those things, then you have some natural ability, some natural direction, right? But if you don't have any of that, you just got to figure it out. Actually, if you do figure it out, then you know how to teach people how to do the things that make people productive, right?
Right.
And so that's why I always start by telling people that I really started with no talents, gifts, and abilities, and it's true. But it's also the reason I was able to do what I've done, and the reason I'm able to teach what I do.
So I've personally sat in one of your classes, and we'll get into this a little bit later. Talking about intrinsic and what's the other word?
Extrinsic.
And extrinsic.
Yeah.
And talking about that and what that means. And I sat through one of your classes. I think it was at Clayton State. Sat in there, and when I walked out, I learned a lot about myself. And I know from that point, then I wanted to learn more from you because of what you taught me about myself, which was really important. So
Yeah.
I know that since then you've been doing some stuff like that. You've been coaching and really just helping people to learn more about themselves and be a better you. But that leads me into my next question about, now I know you've evolved from that spot. You've been a part of Heritage Southeast Bank,
Right.
and now something has been launched, and it's the Engaged Banker experience.
Correct.
How did you get to that point from where we were at Clayton State to now and launching the Engaged Banker experience?
Okay, so the stuff I was teaching at Clayton State, I was an executive in residence at Clayton State's College of Business for 2 years, but I also taught classes there as a guest lecturer for many years. And the stuff I was teaching really started when I started learning about behavioral science. And so I started with kind of behavioral economics, and that's the combining of psychology and economics. But then you add in some neurology and some physiology, because how the body works affects everything, right?
That's
and
right.
So add all those things together, maybe a little sociology because we all interact with each other, and you get this behavioral science kind of basket of stuff. And so I've always been compelled to learn more about what I thought was management and leadership originally, right? And so going all the way back to college, I had a professor who played a cassette tape of Tom Peters talking about his book that was new then called In Search of Excellence. And I became enamored with this idea of management and leadership. And so I started reading all the stuff I could about that and going to seminars. And I've been to every LeaderCast event there ever was, right?
Yes, yes.
In fact, there was an event before LeaderCast called Maximum Impact. And I actually went to one of those and then all the LeaderCast events and read bunches of management and leadership books. But about 2010, I realized that, this behavioral science thing can add another layer onto management and leadership and make it even more effective. And so what I started teaching at Clayton State became executive coaching. So it was a criteria or a curriculum I would use to do executive coaching with people who were leading organizations. So I had many executive coaching clients. But one of whom was Leonard Moreland, who was CEO of Heritage Bank at that time. And so Leonard was one of my coaching clients, and he said, I like this stuff. Would you teach it to some more people at the bank?
Yes.
So I started doing corporate training for Heritage. And then after I'd done several corporate training sessions, he said, hey, why don't you come work here
Yes.
and become like the culture curator. Actually, the original title was Vice President of Disruption.
Love it.
But we changed it to culture curator after a while. And so I kind of did internal corporate training and executive development just for the Heritage Bank people.
Right.
And then Heritage Bank merged with two more banks and became part of this group called Heritage Southeast Bank. And so at that point, Leonard asked me to become Chief People Officer of Heritage Southeast Bank,
Wow.
the holding company.
Wow.
And so I did that and just expanded the use of these behavioral science tools to make people more productive or to help people be more productive. And so that's how I ended up in the banking space.
Right.
I mean, it was just that he happened to be one of my executive coaching clients, and then one thing led to another.
So, were you a banker? I mean,
No.
you're not a banker.
Not a banker.
Originally.
Never,
Okay.
I never have been a banker. And to Leonard's credit, he said, your job description is don't ever become a banker. Not because bankers are bad, but
Right.
because he had enough good bankers. He had people who knew about banking. What he needed was somebody that could look at it objectively, like an external, get an external perspective. And so that's why he said don't become a banker, because he wanted me to maintain that beginner's eye, that external perspective. And so and then the second thing, part of the job description, was make us more successful.
Right.
Okay, so that sounds fun, and it's interesting. I've heard people talk about this since then, but I hadn't before. It sounds fun to have a wide open job description like that, or wide open parameters. But in fact, it's difficult. It's difficult because you don't know what to. It's hard to determine what will make an impact, right? Because there are no parameters.
That's right.
And so I kind of had to figure out, hey, how can I best use my time? How can I add value? And so what was the predecessor Engaged Banker experience, which live broadcasts and articles emailed twice a week, started at Heritage Bank and then went to Heritage Southeast Bank before it became Engaged Banker experience. And that was my idea of how I could add value to everybody in the bank,
Right.
In addition to doing executive coaching.
So break down for everyone that's listening and watching, who is the Engaged Banker experience for, and what do you get when if a bank comes to you right now and they're interested in this Engaged Banker experience, what am I getting?
Okay. So who is it for? It's for everyone in the bank, everyone who works in the bank. So it's for everyone from the newest teller and CSR all the way up to senior management and CEOs.
Okay.
And these tools are universal. They can be used by anyone, right? And they can be understood by anyone too. And so that's kind of part of what Engaged Banker Experience does, is deliver it in a way that people can absorb and apply. So it's for everyone who is working in a community bank. Now, the truth be known, it's for anyone in any organization, right? Because what we're doing is we're using these tools, these research-based behavioral science tools, to help people improve their own productivity. So it's really about improving the individual, right?
Gotcha.
And so the organization's productivity is made up of the productivity of all the individuals. So the organization then benefits, and it happens to be a bank in this case, but it's really about improving that individual. Now, this Engaged Banker experience is customized to banks because I spent 5 years embedded in banks, and I understand how bankers think, and I understand the specific challenges, right? So in addition to being involved in the way the bank was run and doing executive coaching with several people and doing all these the corporate training and the live broadcast, I also facilitated officers meetings, and this is the most important part probably. I also did one-on-one interviews with hundreds of bankers.
Wow. Yeah.
One-on-one. And so that gave me this perspective. I mean, I'm talking about all the way from a teller that had been there 2 weeks to the CEO. And this gave me this perspective on community banks, which I think really makes Engaged Banker Experience unique, in that I understand, inside and out how a community bank works and thinks.
Yeah. And see, that I think that's important because, and the reason why I think it's important is because I've personally benefited from some of your coaching, and which has been phenomenal for me. And I know it makes me a better person as I continue to move forward in things that I'm doing. So I know with you inside the ecosystem of a bank, And like you said, talking to tellers all the way up to the CEOs, I know you've had some conversations. I'm not going to ask you to share any of those conversations. I know those are confidential, but I know some of the conversations that you've had great insight where you can probably take that to an executive team or executive management team and say, hey, this is what people are thinking and listening.
Exactly. And so there's the external perspective piece, but also there is the power in hearing what an individual is concerned about, what their aspirations are at each one of those levels, right? And almost nobody else in any organization it has the time or the format to do that.
That's right.
And so it's kind of a unique value add.
Yeah. That's so important, and people take that for granted. It's so siloed between going from a teller all the way to the executive management. You're right. There's no one person in an organization that covers that entire scope. So let me ask you this next question. We talked a little bit earlier about the intrinsic and extrinsic. How do you?
Extrinsic.
Extrinsic. I get tripped up on that. So explain that to me. How does that tie into your program?
Okay. Yeah. So it's huge. So first of all, I want to say that Engaged Banker experience and anything else I do is not motivational hype. It's not about motivating people.
Right.
It's about giving motivated people tools that they can use to achieve what they want to achieve. But it's not at its core about motivation. But as you know, people must be motivated in order to accomplish anything, right?
That's right.
Okay, so extrinsic motivation just means external. Extrinsic motivation comes from outside of you.
Yeah.
So extrinsic motivation can come from your salary. It can come from incentives and bonuses. It can come from promotions. It can come from your title, right? Your corner office, whatever. Extrinsic is anything external.
Gotcha.
By the way, there are negative extrinsic motivations too. It can come from being intimidated or, from having a boss that yells at you. That's an extrinsic motivation, right?
Gotcha.
Okay, so extrinsic motivations, whether bad or good, are less effective than intrinsic. And intrinsic is internal.
Right.
So intrinsic motivations come from inside of you, and they have to do with what you want to accomplish, what you want to achieve yourself, right? Not what your boss wants you to achieve or what your organization wants you to achieve, but what you want to achieve. Okay, so intrinsic motivation, it no matter how it's delivered, is always more powerful than extrinsic motivation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so what Engaged Banker experience does, and behavioral science in general does, is it leverages that intrinsic motivation to help you achieve what you want to achieve, because one, it's more powerful, and two, it's completely in your control.
That's right. Wow. I mean, so, what are three things right now that you would say we should know about Engaged Banker experience that most likely we may not have covered a little bit earlier on?
Okay.
And, three things if you have that.
Okay, I think I designed the Engaged Banker Experience website correctly, because I think it answers these questions. So the first one is that it's based on rigorously conducted, empirically validated behavioral science, not somebody's opinion, not behavioral, not motivational hype. And so it's based on research done by the smartest people at the finest institutions in the world. It's Harvard and Columbia and Princeton and Wharton and Stanford and Duke and Oxford and Cambridge. And so if you go to Engaged Banker Experience and look at the page that says the research,
right,
it lists all of the sources for the Engaged Banker Experience content. So it's each person and all their credentials are there. Okay, so that's one thing. That's the one thing, that it's based on really solid research by the best researchers at the best institutions. The second thing is that it's the way it's delivered.
Yeah.
Because it wouldn't matter how good that research was if it wasn't delivered in a way people could absorb it and apply it, right?
That's right.
And so this evidence-based delivery method called spaced repetition. And it's the second thing you should know about Engaged Banker Experience, because it's huge to the success of Engaged Banker Experience. And okay, so spaced repetition is this delivery method in which you cover a topic, and then you repeat that topic again a couple of days later, because there's this what they call the forgetting curve. So everybody, if you learn something, you forget most of it within the first few days. But if you review it, then that forgetting curve is decreased, And if you review it again, it's decreased again.
Ah.
So the way engaged banker experience uses spaced repetition is a topic is introduced in a live broadcast, then it's recapped in a written article, and then it's covered again at the beginning of the next broadcast and the beginning of the next article, just at the very beginning, like the first paragraph or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've touched that topic 4 times by the time it's over, right? So you've eliminated the forgetting curve largely, right? So spaced repetition. The other thing is it's delivered in every learning style. So whether you're a visual learner, auditory learner, whether you learn by reading, whether you learn kinesthetically, the engaged banker experience is specifically designed to cover every learning style. So that's the second point. The third point is that it's incredibly affordable for a community bank to use because it's only $9 per FTE per month, right? And so think about this. You're going to get intrinsic motivation from that is going to make people more productive than extrinsic motivation from bonuses, incentives, raises, and it's going to cost a lot less.
That's right.
And in this time we're in right now, where this economic uncertainty after the pandemic, when your net interest margin is compressed, and when you don't know about loan loss reserves, and when you don't know if you're going to have that, the money to do the extrinsic motivators, then this is a way to keep people engaged and more productive than extrinsic motivators. So those are the 3 things.
Man, look, my forgetful curve just drops off like this.
Everybody does.
So, I mean, by you saying the different pieces, and it just really clicked for me, from based on the experiences that I've had with you, how you do repeat some of those points that you're covering for that specific topic. So I could attest to that, single-handedly. So, Lon, you are, to me, at the beginning you said you had no talent, no sports skills, nothing.
Right.
But to me, you are phenomenal. The knowledge that you have is far supersedes. You're like up here, and I'm trying to catch up with you. Well, so, with all that smarts, everything that you have there, and I know it didn't come overnight. I know, over time, you've gained that. You always share with me a book. So you share with me multiple books, multiple podcasts, websites, all kinds of things that enrich me. And I want you to enrich others. What are some podcasts or books or something like that you're listening to right now, or maybe some of your favorites, maybe 1 or 2 of your favorites?
Okay. So first I want to say thank you for the compliment, but I swear to you, it's all learned. Yeah. And I say that, I want you to know that because other people can learn it. Yeah. And I figured out how to teach it. So if you want to achieve at a high level, it's learnable, no matter where you start, because I guarantee you I started below wherever you are out there, right? Okay, so I do love to consume content by reading books, but I read so slowly that I listen to books on Audible. So that's one thing. That's another thing to know. If you read slowly or you read poorly, then that you may see that as a barrier to consuming what's in books. And by the way, there's stuff in books, even in 2020, that you can't learn anywhere else.
That's right.
But it's not a barrier because almost every book is available in unabridged audio now.
That's right.
So it's so cool. Okay, so let's see. A couple of books. It really kind of depends on the category. If you're talking about management and leadership, obviously there's this canon of books that you would want to read. Yeah. But more recently, and one you might not have heard of, is a book called The Hard Thing About Hard Things, and it's written by a guy named Ben Horowitz. So Ben Horowitz was a leader in the early internet age, and he was one of the creators of the Mosaic browser, one of the owners of Netscape, and so he became very successful from leading companies, tech companies. And then he used the wealth he made from that success to become an investor. So he has this huge data set of companies that he's looked at, ones he's run plus ones he's invested in, and from which to derive these management and leadership lessons. Yeah. Okay, so The Hard Thing About Hard Things is a great book about this, and the title significance is this: that when you look at a problem, a business problem on paper, right? When you look at the spreadsheet, it's pretty obvious what the solution is, right? Right. Except in the real world, so reality and the academic world don't line up. So in the real world, it's more like the difference between economics and behavioral economics. So classical economics says that each one of us, they call them the agents, but each one of us has perfect information and we're perfectly rational.
Right.
But we're never perfectly rational, because perfectly rational means no emotion, and we don't even want to have no emotion, right? So we're not perfectly rational, and we never have perfect information. So behavioral economics says, oh, okay, well let's combine some psychology there, and we'll correct for those two incorrect assumptions. Well, that's kind of what Ben Horowitz' book does. The Hard Thing About Hard Things says, hey, you know what? If you were perfectly rational and perfect information, okay, everything you learn in business school would be applicable and it wouldn't be any problem. But in the real world, that's not how it is. So he says, okay, that these other factors enter into this, and he gives bunches of case studies anyway. So The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz. If you're interested in organizational culture, there's a great book that came out like 2 years ago. It's called The Culture Code. The Culture Code by Daniel Coyle. And I would highly recommend that.
Culture Code, okay.
And also on organizational culture, there's a book called Powerful by Peggy McCord, and she was the head of HR for Netflix for 14 years. Wow. So it's all about the culture they built in Netflix. Yeah. So that's a pretty cool book. And in terms of podcasts, so okay. If you like long form interviews, if you like to listen to smart people talk, the Tim Ferriss Show and the James Altucher Show, they're both great long form interview shows. Yeah. One I've really enjoyed lately, it's just been out for a few months, is called No Stupid Questions. And
who's so
Stephen Dubner, of Freakonomics fame, right? Okay. And Angela Duckworth.
Yes.
So Angela Duckworth is a professor and researcher at the University of Pennsylvania and Wharton School of Business, and she's one of the smartest people in the world. She's got degrees in neuroscience and neurobiology and psychology. She's won a MacArthur Genius Award. She worked for McKinsey, and she wrote the book Grit, which is also a great book recommendation. That's awesome, right? Book. Yeah. Awesome so book. About personal development, the book Grit. Yes. And so Angela Duckworth and Stephen Dubner are the host of No Stupid Questions. And the title is called No Stupid Questions because they're so smart, there's no stupid questions. But the format is each one asks the other one a question, and then they talk about the answers. So No Stupid Questions is one I've really enjoyed. There's another one by Katie Milkman, who is it's sponsored by Schwab. Katie Milkman's the host. She's also a professor at the University of Pennsylvania College of Medicine and at Wharton, and it's called Choiceology. Yes. So Choiceology is about behavioral economics, right? So that's a cool one, too, I really enjoy.
That's a ton of resources you just gave there, and I'm sure, guys, if you're listening, you heard what Lon said. Go out there, check out some of these resources because those are phenomenal. So, last question I have for you, Lon: where can people find out more information about the Engaged Banker experience? How can they get in contact with you? If they want to bring you into their bank, how do they do that?
Okay, so the best way is to go to engagebankerexperience.com. Okay. And all the information's there, all the research is there. And by the way, the proof is in the pudding, right? It really, all this doesn't matter unless it's impacting people, right? The real people who are really working in the community banks. Yeah. And so there's a page at Engaged Banker Experience called the results, and go click on the results, and then it's just I think there's 70 something, there might be 80 now, different comments people have made about the content of Engaged Banker Experience. And when I say people have made, I mean it's just like regular people who work in community banks. Right. It's tellers and CSRs and branch managers, all the way up to lenders and even senior management. Yeah. But it's just comments they've made about the way they've been impacted by the Engaged Banker Experience content. So you definitely go check out the results, because the results are all that really matter. But the way to learn more about Engaged Banker Experience is engagebankerexperience.com. If you want to sign up, there's a page where you can sign up right there on the website. On the website, okay. Yeah, and another way to learn more about it is to follow Engaged Banker Experience on LinkedIn.
Awesome.
So I'm very active on LinkedIn with Engaged Banker Experience and personally. And by the way, if you follow Engaged Banker Experience on LinkedIn, you're going to get lots of free content.
There you go. Right. There you go. So Lon, I want to just thank you again for stopping by and being a part of the podcast. Really enjoyed. Great conversation. I always learn something whenever I talk to you. So thank you for being on today. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it very much.
Absolutely.